Okay, we're going to get going at the Fabricator Stage. We've got a great presentation coming up for those that can attend. We've got why diversify and the challenges associated with it. Why diversify your business. We've got some great speakers, and I'd like to turn the time over to them.
All right, thanks, Blake.
Thanks, Blake.
All righty, we are going to jump right in. Just a couple of quick introductions. You already know who we are, but I'm Rich Katzmann. I run the Rockheads Group, so if anybody's interested in learning more about the Rockheads Group, please let me know. Formerly, I was president of Laser Products, and so I've done some commercial installs. That's been about what I've done. These guys are much more experienced than I am, and I mean old.
Be careful, I resemble that remark. My name's Ed Young. I do a lot of work with fab shops of all different sizes. I help owners get shops ready to sell. I've done some turnarounds, do some restructuring if needed. I ran a fab shop for a while. I've worked in lots of other industries, and this was just a lot of fun, folks. It's a blast.
Nicest people on the planet.
And I'm Mickey Gault, currently in the software side of the business, but I worked as a fabricator for 20 plus years, had my own small fabrication shop, and then worked for a very large shop with multiple locations, and quite a bit of diversity within the product line. So we're here to talk about that today.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's dive in. So today we're going to talk about the different types of diversification, right? It's kind of a broad word, right? Whether it's customer segments, material types, type of projects. So we're going to, is that me?
Somebody else.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to talk about the different types of diversification. We're going to focus a little bit on customer types because that really drives a lot of operational issues, depending on who you're selling to and the type of projects. So with that, we're just going to get into it. Whoa, this thing just keeps doing that. Too much coffee. There we go. All right, diversification, right, in general, right, is very similar, at least in my mind, and you guys please jump in, to portfolio management of your finances, right? You don't want everything in aggressive stocks. You don't want everything in cash, right? Because what happens is one thing goes up, the other one goes down. And we definitely see that in our industry, right? Sometimes multifamily screaming along and retail slow. Then it can flip. Then builders can come into play. So we constantly have different waves of customer types. And the good news is, though, it's almost always, maybe 08 was a different case, that as some are coming down, there are definitely other ones coming up. So why don't you guys share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I would agree 100%. I witnessed it, and to be ready for that, there are certainly unique aspects to each one of those types, customer types, right? So you've got to have the infrastructure to be able to handle those and adapt with those and move resources to be able to support those various business lines for that.
Yeah, a lot of folks want to diversify because they want to do things not just to take care of business cycles, but also to drive profit up. And one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is if your profit's not great now, diversifying may not be a good thing. We'll talk a little bit about that.
That's great.
And with each of our roles today, we get a chance to work with a number of businesses, right? Number of fab shops, and certainly the larger fab shops and the ones that appear most insulated from any movement like that, Rich, are the ones that are well diversified now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's the reason to do it.
Right. I mean, the Rockheads, for example, again, larger shops who have been around for a long time, they're all diversified. There isn't a single Rockhead that is 95% one category and that's it, right? So they've been able to sustain and grow because they're diversified, right? And then the other type of diversification we're going to talk about is with materials, right? Materials, cabinets, tile, what other areas are there to get into that again can sustain some downturn, right? But they can also complement other sides of your business.
Sure. Yeah, one thing that comes to mind for me there, Rich, is if you are getting into, say, commercial work, or oftentimes they're going to be looking for maybe solid surface component as well as the hard surface granite quartz.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so if you can support that you'll have a greater opportunity to get more of that business.
Sure. And builders certainly always want cabinets and countertops together, right? The timing matches up, all of the sizes, everything matches up, so that's always a big plus.
If I could stay on that commercial theme for just a minute as well, you mentioned the contractors wanting to do business with as few vendors as possible, right? So, one way that you can really get into that business more easily is to work through a millwork company where they're taking on, and they have more experience, they're taking on a lot of the safety programs and all the paperwork, all of those things, right? And so you get, you may lose a little bit on the margin side, but I think it's an easier way to step into that business for sure.
No, that makes perfect sense. Sub to a sub, for sure. All righty, kind of moving along. The group is, again, this just kind of reinforces the idea of portfolio management, right? You want to leverage your risk, you want to lower your risk by being involved in multiple aspects of the business. All right, let's just look at what the industry is doing right now, and we'll kind of blow through these pretty quickly. But, if you look at what multifamily has done, it has skyrocketed. And multifamily is about to turn the corner, right? It is really ready to come crashing down. Consumer and professional remodel now is ramping up in the next couple of years. So as multifamily is coming down, walk-in business, dealer resale business is coming up. Commercial projects are staying relatively flat. Again, this is looking out 2 to 3 years. So we've got some ups, we've got some downs, and then single-family construction is popping up a little bit too. So the new builder business is definitely popping up. I've just got a quick chart here. So big box and retail is planned. This is 24 to 25, right? Builder business is projected to come up 4%. Multifamily off 22%. Commercial off 9%. I've seen various reports where it also stays stable, but commercial off 9%. And then there we go again with the professional remodel.
And commercial is such a broad segment that you can have parts of that market segment go up and down. Like obviously office space is so underutilized right now, it's going to be off. So if you're doing anything that has to do with office space, with lobbies and boardrooms, that sort of thing, that's going to be slow. But in commercial, you can get in. I've got a client who's doing a lot of commercial that ends up being like the government in Canada owns and funds all of the high-rise retirement communities. It's exploding right now because of demographics. So again, within these different segments, there are different slices you need to take a look at.
Yeah, this really surprised me. Thank you for doing this research. I really appreciate it because, if I drove through Charlotte, North Carolina right now, where I'm from, I see a ton of multifamily, right? There's apartments everywhere that aren't finished yet, right? But these are leading indicators.
Yep.
These are the new building permits, right? Really
what's visual may not be what's coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and also too, none of this takes into account geography.
Right.
Your 5 fastest growing states, last time I checked: Texas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. That's why when you drive through Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, you're going to see, because people are moving in like crazy, they can't build enough new houses, and there's not enough inventory in the market.
Right.
Multifamily is the only other option. And so in states where there's a lot of population growth, the little old state of South Carolina has got 400 to 500 people moving into the state every day. And North Carolina, because it's a larger state, has even more. And so geography plays a role as you look at these segments as well. Just keep that in mind, because these numbers may or may not hold for those 5 states. You go to California, Oregon, Washington State, and some others, you may see different numbers.
No, absolutely, and I guess the wow factor for me is if you got a 22% drop and an 8% gain. So you've got a 30-point swing depending on what segment you're in. That's massive. And then this is one of my favorite charts, National Association of Home Builders. It's going to be a little hard to read, so grab the QR code at the end. But by state, what's going on? So I'm Chicago, for example, 43% decline in multi-family permits this year. That is massive. But if you look at Chicago on the right-hand side, we've got a 30% increase in single-family permits. So we are doing massive up and downs, and and you can go state by state and check out where this. So even your Charlotte, right, is showing off for permits, right, because of your leading indicators.
Now, is this their forecast, or this is actually year over year, 24, 23?
It's actual, but it's permits.
Okay.
Yep. So
that's the
still
leading
below,
indicator for the. Gotcha. Good.
And again, these are great charts if you guys want to grab them afterwards.
Yep.
I'm just going to refresh here. You've already seen this. Average price to the consumer by segment, right? So another reason to consider getting into different segments, right? You go all the way down to $60 a foot for a track builder, but now walk-in business is nearly $100 a foot. And Ed, you referenced this a little bit earlier, right? You can really drive margins by picking a segment.
Very much so. And how well you perform in that segment can drive margins as well. Because even though a lot of commercial work isn't as high dollar per square foot as, say, retail, when you get a couple of large commercial projects, that's such a huge overall volume. It can have a big impact on your business. And if you're not ready for that impact, that's a whole lot bigger impact than picking up 5 or 10% on, say, your walk-in retail in terms of volume. So that's part of your balance as well. One of the challenges I mentioned earlier, talking about, is let's say you're big into custom home builder and retail right now, and you've got some commercial you want to go after, for example. Making sure you understand what that playing field looks like is really critical. Because I've talked to a lot of folks who've tried to make that kind of move, and they'll bid and get those jobs, but they haven't thought about a couple of different factors. The two big ones, one is cash flow. A lot of times on commercial, you're doing all the work now, buying the materials now, you're not going to get paid for 2, 3, 4 months, depending on how the terms of your contract are set up. So managing cash flow for a big chunk of business can be huge. I've got a client who's picked up a bunch of these retirement communities in Canada right now who's dying because he's picked up too much. And he just doesn't have the cash, and now he's scrambling to find the cash to support the business. I have watched businesses in this industry and others go under because they took on too many obligations for this type of thing, didn't account for cash flow, and it killed them because they couldn't make payroll. The other thing, especially on commercial, is I had a client several years back who was a large masonry contract on a national level, and they were talking to me about the changes with GCs and their project managers. In the old days, they had really good project managers, seasoned folks, a little gray hair, and who knew how to communicate well with all the subs so that they got the right information, the right subs at the right time. And they would be open for communication. They'd meet with you face-to-face the whole bit. Today, you get a lot of younger folks coming straight out of college. Now they're a project manager. They won't answer a phone call, won't return a voicemail, won't answer an email. They will generally do text. And when there's a change in scope, they send the entire project document out to all the subs. You got to sort through and see if any of those changes apply to you or not. And so when it comes down to how do you schedule your fab shop for what's going on site, these project managers won't have current information. They say, yeah, we'll be ready to jump into units 1 through 10 next week. You go out there and it's still in studs. So when you start getting into commercial projects, you got to automatically at a lower price point, you have to go automatically plan for having your own internal project managers who are going out, laying eyes on the site to understand what the real schedule is, what the real status is, so that misinformation is not killing the rest of your business. And that's a big thing I see a lot of shops not accounting for when they start getting into the commercial space for the first time.
Well, and if I can transition to the dealer, since we saw that the dealer, the reseller side is going to be going up, right? So that's really cool. So, with the commercial space, you've got that 10% retainage at the end, right? You've got a lot more estimating that needs to be done in order to get the volume of quotes out there in order to get those approvals coming in. And it's not really that way on the dealer side. So there's maybe some advantages there.
Yeah.
And there are software systems, for instance, in the market today where the dealers can actually do their own quotes and they can see their own schedules. And so you don't have to put all that manpower in to do all that quoting back and forth. I mean, you'll review them and approve them. They might need brackets or something, right? So you would do those steps, but the bulk of the work can still be done by the dealer. And look at how attractive that price to the customer point is. So
and
definitely something to think about.
Benefits like that, where they could do their own quoting, have to go in and necessarily be the cheapest, right?
Right,
You can go in and just be the better solution for them, right? The dealer's going to want to be able to do an instant quote,
Yeah,
and
and
they're
see
going to
the
want to
schedule.
see the schedule.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that's a huge advantage. That's a nice, feels like a nice low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
If someone's not doing enough dealer work right now,
If you're doing work with contractors now and you're not doing much with dealers and you want to get into dealers, ask yourself this question. Are all of your contractors really good, grade A, well-run contractors? You've probably got some A's, some B's, some C's, and some that are lower. The same thing will happen in the dealers. Even though the opportunity is there, make sure you vet them well. It's one of those caveats as you start to diversify, do it intelligently.
That's a good point. Yeah.
very smart. All right, moving on. So this is kind of the last slide, right? So this is the everything's affected slide.
Yeah.
So I'd really love for you guys, with all your operational experience, plant experience, pick what you want, talk about what you want, but the whole idea is I've been 90% walk-in, now I'm going to do some track builders. So, talk about what effects you have to, the cash flow one is a phenomenal example.
Yeah, we hit that one pretty hard, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, so Salesforce, let's talk that. So if you're 90% retail today, right, and you want to get into maybe the dealers or maybe commercial, your that ideal salesperson that has that really personal touch with those customers are really becoming more like estimators and or project managers, right, or account managers, as opposed to that real strong sales skill in that manner. So, that changes, right? So just one of the items off the top here.
Yep.
Yeah, you got a retail salesperson who is great with colors and great with materials and great at helping a homeowner navigate all those complexities. Your production builder is going to have a handful of selections and that's it. It's all about price and performance.
Yeah, really good at right? So that salesperson has to all of a sudden become really good at the minutia, the details that allow the project to go through successfully. And oftentimes that's
in conflict with their personalities,
exactly.
right? Sales folks traditionally don't like the details.
That's right.
Right? They want to be in front of the customer talking. As you said, now they're becoming project managers.
And that retail salesperson likes customers coming to them.
Right.
This now outside salesperson is a different mentality. They got to be a hunter-gatherer. They got to be salivating for the kill. They want to go out and succeed and get that new relationship. Totally different sales process.
Well, I'm going to let you hit the fabrication because I know that's like right in your wheelhouse. I'm going to touch template and install here. So if you're going into a homeowner, that experience of how that template or installer might walk somebody through what they're going to do, hold their hand, right? With just that whole personal touch once again is a 180 from what it's going to be when they walk into that commercial project, right? They've got to force people out of their way in order to get done what they need to get done. Like literally, it's move everything out of my way. I've got heavy stuff I got to bring through. Right?
Same with new construction, right? There's nobody there for them to talk to. They're just in there doing it.
So oftentimes you're going to see specialists in that regard. Oftentimes it's really hard for an installer to be really good at both retail and say multifamily or commercial. So keep that in mind too. You might need to look for those different resources.
Are you guys seeing crews that are differentiated? Where you might have an install crew that all the complex projects go to, or another, set of crews where the multifamily go to.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and because the PPE requirements and the expertise there, and everything involved on the commercial side or multifamily is going to be different than that dealer or retail side.
Yeah, think about the multifamily commercial, the install crew that's going in, they're trying to put in 12 units today, versus the install crew that's going to go into a $3 or $4 million home, and they're doing the butler's pantry and the laundry today. Two totally different approaches, different personalities, different customer service skills, and different work content and different skills, because in some of that high-end work, you've got, it's tough to take somebody who's used to doing squares and rectangles in multifamily or commercial, and now we're going to do mitered drop edges and waterfall mitered legs on islands and sills for windows and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Different skill set, different mindset. You've got to take all that into account.
making up a number, unencumbered by the facts, as I like to say, what percent of install crews do you think can effectively handle both of those?
5%?
Yeah, it's going to be,
It's that, yeah.
it's very low.
Okay.
I'm going to agree. Yeah,
Now,
that's
I
as good
would-
a guess as any.
I would guess a templater might be able to handle that dichotomy a little bit better than an install crew.
Better, but still, has its own, still its own beast too.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the difference of, again, the multifamily commercial versus walking into a homeowner's home. Who are you dealing with? You know, the Templar is pretty much on their own. They check in with the project manager, go out, I got to get these 12 units, go knock them out. You walk into Mrs. Smith's home, and she's there watching everything you do and asking you 10 questions every minute.
Yeah.
You know, making that
And
transition.
we might want them in the retail world. It might be ideal if they have some sales skills too, because they can do a little bit of upselling during the templating process, right? They're definitely not going to need that on any other type of business. Like this.
Stole my next point.
Yeah.
Great, that's great. And of course, in fabrication, the same thing. The nature of the work, squares and rectangles with these edges versus all the really high-end mitered edges and fancy edge finishes and walk-in showers, doing all the wall clad and the floors and the ceilings and a whole bit, fireplace surrounds, different skill sets, different impact in your shop. One of the great strengths, we talked a little about this in the last session, we'll hit it again in the M&A session after lunch. You've got gap accounting metrics, gross margin, and those types of things. The management accounting metrics of throughput and operating expense really help you quantify the difference in work content much more effectively than a typical gross margin analysis. And so when you start looking at how do I schedule the shop, because you're going to have some mix, lower end custom home builder versus higher end custom home builder, or I'm doing mid-level custom home builder and I'm doing a lot of kitchen and bath and flooring stores. You're going to have some mix in there these days as you diversify. Understanding the work content and what your capacity of your shop is to fabricate that work. Throughput dollars is a huge impact, can be a huge help in trying to manage that and set it up. Combine that with something like buffer management, and it reduces a lot of the chaos in your shop. And what it ends up doing is it helps free up capacity you're already paying for. The more diverse you get in your different types of market segments that you get into, the more important this becomes because you're dealing with a lot more variability out there, and you've got to schedule well, you're still going to meet your promise dates. Those are all critical to making a good profit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, same question, right? 5% of the install crews can do both. What percent of machine operators, fabricators can do both?
I would say far and away the majority.
I think it's a lot higher, and a lot of that's because of technology.
Yeah.
My background before this industry was in a lot of other industries. And when I walked into this industry for the first time over 20 years ago with the DuPont project, I was shocked at the lack of technology. But when you start looking at where we are today and the steep curve that we've come up, I was talking with Mark a little bit at NSI this morning about that, we have really come up the curve. 20 years ago, you walk into a shop that does $3 million a year in sales, they'd have a bridge saw, a large hand router, and still be doing stick templates. Today, a typical $3 million shop has got CNC equipment and they're doing digital templating. So we have really come up the curve on technology, and that, I think, is the answer to your question. It gives you a lot more flexibility in being able to adapt to these different market segments.
So you reduce your front-end sales, you increase your project managers and those familiar with the technical side of the business, right? And then the fabrication shop can typically handle both types of work, for sure. So, but it's really surprised me the amount of miters and complexity that come along with these other business types too.
Yeah.
So,
Like reception desks. They always get
right. Reception.
And that flexibility has a limit. And I'll give you a good example. I had a client in the UK a couple of years ago. In the British Isles, a typical kitchen is about 35, 40 square feet. Ours are 2 or 3 times that size. This shop was doing a lot of that, but they were also doing large commercial projects they would ship to Dubai. I mean, super high, complex, very custom. And so what happened is everything would go through their saws and water jets, and then they went through 2 different flows because the smaller, they call them worktops, or a typical small kitchen for us, would go through your typical CNC equipment, a quick once over, and then out the door. That high-end custom had a lot more hand fab and a lot more hand finish, and so they had 2 different flows, and that's normal in any manufacturing scenario, not just this industry. because it's two different skill sets. So it depends on how diverse those different markets are. So what I just said earlier about technology taking care of a lot of it, there's a caveat there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so if you were going to branch off, right, a starting point I would suggest is Rockheads, ISFA, SFA, get with some of these groups because they're going to know fabricators that are already in that business line and can connect you. And that is going to be really, really powerful to go in and observe and make sure it's the direction you want to go. And also make sure that you're, consider all the factors that we're talking about here that would allow you to be successful in that line.
Sure.
Agree 100%. I'm still amazed at how many shop owners I talk to have never been to a show like this. They've never joined another industry group. They're sitting with these islands by themselves. So certainly what Mickey just said is perfect. We've talked a lot about different market segments. Everything we've said is true about that. When you start looking at different product lines, you want to include cabinets. You need to have a certain size, and you better have a really good, strong, profitable business before you make that type of move. I don't know how much you guys have run into it, but I've talked to a lot of $3 and $4 million a year shops that they're struggling at 2, 3, 4% earnings, and they want to increase their profitability, so they're going to take on the cabinet line. Well, if you're struggling with countertops and you can't make a profit, now you need a whole different set of software and skill sets, sales process, the whole and different supply chain. You're going to take on cabinets too. It's a tough move if you're a smaller shop. You need to get to be a larger size so you can allocate the resources, do the planning up front, and do it well. A better move would be if you want to add another product line, maybe go from just countertops to adding tile or something like that will be a lot easier than something like cabinets, which is a lot tougher to get into.
What are both of your thoughts on adding solid surface?
I mean, it's relatively easy and cheap to get into, right? I mean, it's wood shop is what you need, right? And although I have found it's difficult to find true craftsmen these days there, a lot of the true craftsmen have aged, like the rest of us. But yeah, I would definitely recommend finding that one expert and bringing them in to help get you down that path, right?
The good news is that we're seeing some more requirements for solid surface. I think that's being driven a lot by medical. The medical folks love it because when you have a seam in solid surface, if you've done it right, you can't even see it.
That's right.
So that's less of an opportunity for germs to grow. And that's why medical folks love solid surface. The good news, too, is ISFA right back here has got sessions to train you on how to do solid surface.
Correct.
So if you want to learn how to do that, if you can't find the expert Mickey's talking about, you can go find a good woodworker, put them through one of ISFA's classes, and you get a solid surface pretty quickly.
Very good point. Yeah.
One of the earliest countertop shops I ever walked into was Precision in Oregon. You know what they were doing? They had a laminate shop, they had a solid surface shop, and they had a hard surface shop. So I think that diversification is great to look at all of those because especially in a down economy, if you're in a geographic area that's suffering on pricing right now, offering those options is a really good solution to help you keep sales and keep relationships and help make your B2B customers happy and your homeowners happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. We are just about out of time here. Always, like last time, open it up, see if there's any questions. Blake's going to run around. There it is. Oh.
And while you're thinking about questions, we know we've covered a lot in the last 30 minutes. If you would like to get a copy of this presentation, get that QR code, put in your email address, and you'll get a copy of the presentation. Because we know folks may have a lot of questions about this that come up maybe tonight, we're going to do this again tomorrow. Check your schedules. But then even after that, if you've got more questions, we've scheduled a free webinar in June to cover this topic. And it's not going to be a sales process or anything like that. No sales pitch. It's just we're going to review this presentation for a few minutes and then open it up for questions and just have a discussion. So if you've got questions, you want to dive into some of these, want to talk to other fabricators, hit this QR code, sign up for that free webinar, and you get a chance to look at it a little bit deeper.
Perfect, thank you. If we could do a quick round of applause for our speakers. And we're going to be here all day. There's a lot of great topics. We're going to be back at noon investigating what leading shops are doing with technology to prepare for cyber attacks. That's a big one. That one holds near and dear to my heart for sure. But cyber attack security, and then we got a lot of great topics. The screen on the back has all the topics for the next 3 days. We're going to have some great presentations, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.